It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, the PGA Championship, we dive into Phil Mickelson's incredible finish in South Carolina with Cam Rogers. And later on in the show, we talk hockey with Anna Knox of the Power Play Point podcast. All that and so much more. But before we begin, we would like to thank our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Big thanks to Dave Johnson and Productions by Quet as well. All right, it's time for yet another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. It comes your way right now.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. As always, I am your host, Josh Kirby. I am pleased to be here with you all today. Thank you for checking us out, as always. Big show to get into, but before we begin, our sponsors, once again, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserve, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. I have two very special guests coming onto the show. First and foremost, we're going to discuss the PGA Championship. Phil Mickelson, one of the oldest players to win a PGA Championship, and my goodness, I did not expect Phil to pull it out. But towards the end of that last day of the PGA Championship, I just knew that Phil Mickelson had a pretty good chance, and he pulled it out. We talk with Cam Rogers, host of the Tiger Woods podcast on the Bleav Podcast Network, about the PGA Championship and so much more. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you about Regroup Building Services. If you're looking to get your home remodeled, any part of your home, bathroom, kitchen, want to get a deck built, anything like that, Regroup Building Services can just about do everything. And take it from me, because they came in and they remodeled my family's kitchen, and they do a great job. So if you're looking for any sort of home remodeling needs, deck work done, anything of that nature, reach out to my guy Sean Hibbard over at Regroup Building Services today. You can check them out on their website, www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. All right, the Kirby on Sports Podcast continues. Now, we are joined by Cam Rogers. He is the host of the Tiger Woods Show on the Bleav Podcast Network. Covers anything and everything golf, and he's taking some time to come with us here on the Kirby on Sports Podcast to talk about the PGA Championship and some other stuff. Cam, thanks so much for the time. How are you, sir?
What's going on, Josh? Great to be with you. My gracious, that was something last weekend at Kiowa. I mean, Phil Mickelson capturing yet another major championship. If you told me that was going to happen, I would have laughed in your face. But, man, it was special.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking that, too. Phil Mickelson, I mean, getting straight to the point, he is the oldest golfer to win a PGA championship. They were talking about he would need some sort of special exemption to play in the next tournament, but that's no longer the case because for the next 5 years, he's qualified to play in any of these tournaments and lifetime for the PGA. So he just proved them wrong, and he is the oldest to do it. And I just thought watching this as a fan, I don't really cover golf all the time, but I do enjoy watching it. It's like, wow, Phil is actually performing at his best. And I thought out of this championship, there could have been so many other people who took the cup, but Phil Mickelson, it just seemed like he was on a roll on that last day and he got the job done.
Yeah, Phil Mickelson taught us a couple of things about the game of golf. It can span so many ages. You talk about Colin Morikawa winning the PGA Championship in his second major start. Phil Mickelson gets it done in his 116th major start. So the span of ages on the PGA Tour that can actually win is wider than any other sport I can think of, to be honest with you. Honestly, we could have had an Open champion back in 2009 by the name of Tom Watson at age 59. If he made that putt, he would have beaten Stuart Sink, excuse me. So I think that Phil Mickelson really turned us on to something special about the game. And look, he's going to be a factor as we continue through this summer. I don't think this was a flash in the pan. If you really drill down on the numbers going into this tournament, Phil was steadily gaining strokes with his approaches. His ball striking was improving. So there were some signs, but not to win a PGA championship on the longest course in major championship history. No, I would have said, yeah, maybe a top 25 was feasible for Phil Mickelson, but not actually capturing yet another major. So it really was impressive for him. And we learned a lot from this victory. And you mentioned it, the 5-year exemption for the U.S. Open. Of course, there was some talk about him getting a special exemption, and then he accepted it. That's out the window. He now has 5 cracks at the U.S. Open guaranteed. He'll be there at Torrey Pines next month.
Yeah, let's just talk about that course first and foremost. That course looks amazing right on the ocean. What a better place to play golf, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, an American link style course, which means the course is fully exposed. And that means wind can set you in many different directions. From hole to hole, the wind can be different. And I'm not surprised that the winning score was single digits under par, because this was a difficult track, the ocean course at Kiowa Island, highly regarded and also thought of as the toughest course in the United States. So we're talking about length, we're talking about winds, we're talking about volatile conditions in general. And for somebody at the age of 50 to tame this beast is truly remarkable. Obviously, this is not your typical American style of golf course. So you had a lot of international guys play well because obviously they know that link style of golf. Louis Ustasen T2. Padraig Harrington coming out of nowhere, the multi-major champion, first top 10 in a major since 2012. He was T4. Shane Lowry, the reigning Open champion, T4 as well. Paul Casey, the Englishman, finished inside the top 5. So it was not surprising to see this eclectic leaderboard, if you will, because we sort of got that at the 2012 PGA Championship, also at the Ocean Course. If you look at the leaderboard right after Rory McIlroy, a bunch of random guys like David Lynn, and yeah, you have some brand names like Justin Rose, but it was a really unique leaderboard then. It was this past week as well.
Yeah, I know what you say there because of the winds and it's an open course. It's very different to a course like Augusta National where the Masters are played with trees and stuff blocking the wind. So right. I agree with you there because a -6 score to win the PGA Championship on that type of course, I can most definitely relate to it because the wind is just coming through. And on the ocean, all those elements being right there near the ocean, maybe it could have played a factor, but the winds on the ocean played a huge factor, in my opinion, in that course. But I would like to backtrack a minute for our listeners who don't really know the game of tournament golf. Can you sort of briefly explain, we don't have to go into much detail about this, Cam, but how the tournament field is pretty much set? Is it invitation only? Is it the people before who won the PGA championship? They're able to come in. How does that all work? Because I'm sort of curious about that too. I've tried doing research before and in the past, and I still haven't been able to figure it out.
I'm pretty sure the PGA, the Professional Golf Association, lays this out somewhere on their website. So if everybody wants the exact layout about who gets invited and why, definitely check that out. But it is a collection of a few things. Number one, top 50 golfers in the world. Boom, you're in. Number two, if you've won the PGA championship before, boom, you're in. That's why Sean McKeel plays and those sorts of guys. Rich Beam, for example. Number three, if you qualify as a PGA professional, you're in as well. That's what's special about the PGA Championship, of course. They let the PGA professionals play. If you qualify, they are almost never a factor at this tournament. Many of them, if not most of them, miss the cut. But that's one element as well. And then there are some other invites like the Sunshine Tour, the European Tour, the international tours out there. Some players get invites that way as well. So it's a collection of things, but it's a good field. Obviously, when you have the top 50 golfers in the world, you're going to have the likes of Brooks Koepka and Colin Morikawa, Daniel Berger, etc. So that's sort of how it is. I wouldn't say it's the best field in golf. I think the best field in golf is actually the Players' Championship, but that's sort of how things are laid out at the PGA.
I see. Thank you for explaining that more. So, really quick, Hideki, who won the Masters, was in this tournament. He did not play well. Does the Masters champion go into getting picked for the PGA championship, or is that two separate entities?
Yeah, I was not too surprised to see Hideki Matsuyama not really be a factor on the leaderboard. He took a long layoff after the Masters, and rightfully so. We're talking about a guy who really broke through in a big way for his country of Japan, and he went out there. I'm sure he partied his butt off, had a good time, put the clubs away for a little bit from what I understand. So I think that for him to make the cut was pretty impressive, because I actually made a bet that he wasn't going to make the cut, and understandably so, again, because so much was going on in his life. But a top 25 finish. I mean, he was T23, so it wasn't horrible per se for Hideki Matsuyama. But, I think it's just a step in the process. There was a situation with Sergio Garcia after he won the Masters. He just missed a slew of cuts at major championships after that. I don't think that's going to be the case for Hideki Matsuyama. His ball striking is too good. His short game is low key, very good too. And it all comes down to the putter for him sometimes. So for Hideki, he'll be fine. Could be a factor at the US Open at Torrey Pines. This was just kind of like another step for him in the process as a major champion.
So looking at this leaderboard, once again, we're joined by Cam Rogers, the host of the Tiger Woods Show on the Bleav Podcast Network. Find him on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. Looking at this last day of the tournament, getting towards the last couple of holes, I could tell it was getting intense. It was Phil Mickelson tied for second and third going back and forth. Brooks Koepka, Louis Ustasen, and it was neck and neck to the wire, in my opinion. And I feel like that's what made this tournament come down to the very end that much special.
Yeah, I thought it was a really special tournament, and I was actually traveling back to Maryland, so I had it on during my flight and what have you. So it was a little nerve-wracking to make sure everything was connected and I was getting the right feed and all that jazz. It worked out fine. Eventually, Phil peeled away, though, you may recall, too. So there was sort of a lack of drama toward the end because Louis and Brooks kind of crumbled a little bit. So, look, overall, it really was a fantastic Sunday. Credit to Brooks Koepka. I mean, nobody was on him going into that tournament. He was 55-1 to win outright. I mean, that's a ridiculous number for somebody like Brooks Koepka, who perennially finishes inside the top 10 at major championships. Yes, I understand the knee injury and what have you, but that was a crazy number at 55-1. So for him to show up coming off two missed cuts at the Masters and the Byron Nelson and play well and hang in there, truly remarkable. Louis Ustasen was a guy I was sort of on going into this week because I was looking at the grinders, the short game players who can play well in the wind. Louis Ustasen, one of those guys, obviously an Open champion at St. Andrews back in 2010. So not too surprising to see him be a factor, but it really became the Phil Mickelson show toward the end of that Sunday. And the crowd, by the way, Josh, was very much a pro-Phil crowd. Not surprising either. We've seen Brooks do it plenty of times, and he will again at a major championship. But for Phil, it had been quite some time. And obviously, it's good to root for the underdog. And Phil was an underdog going into this week, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's talk about the 18th hole, because not really about the play of golf or anything here, but Phil fired that shot on 18 going towards the fans in the grandstand, if I recall correctly. After that second shot going on the green, two putting to win the PGA championship. After that, the crowd erupted. And then you're looking on TV, everybody's running up to try to get a front row seat for Phil's win on 18 green. You look at golf and you think this is a quiet game where you don't want to get interrupted. Any sort of distraction causes your concentration to break, but you're here at the PGA championship, and Phil Mickelson is about to win his PGA championship, and you have the crowd running on the golf course and cheering for Phil. I mean, I can't believe that happens. But first and foremost, because I feel like golf is a more respected, quiet game filled with concentration and quietness. Because I don't watch golf all the time, but when I do, I'm like, this is insane. The amount of fans that were just rushing up to get a front row seat. And Phil's concentration to not miss a putt there was insane, with all the crowd cheering for him and everything.
Yeah, a couple of things there. Number one, the PGA actually apologized for the big crowd that was sort of swallowing up Phil and Brooks Koepka on that 18th hole walk up. And actually, Brooks talked about it after that round. He was kind of complaining. He can be a whiner sometimes, Josh, but I guess he got dinged on the knee from a couple of people in the crowd. And I totally believe him, because I could see that these people are probably not sober and going crazy for Phil Mickelson and what have you. So that's number one. The PGA sort of apologized and understood that, okay, we need to get better with our security. And hopefully the USGA is watching and they understand that for the US Open next month. Also, there was a bit of, I think, a COVID coming out party that weekend, Josh, because it was a full crowd. People were cooped up. Maybe it's cabin fever for the past year, and everybody's bursting onto the scene for old Phil Mickelson. So that was certainly a factor. You may recall back at the 2018 Tour Championship, which Tiger Woods won, his walk up the 18th hole had a swath of people, but they were at a distance. It was not, oh my God, I'm going to swallow him up. They would never let that happen. So I think security in a post-pandemic world, which is what I'm calling it sort of now, was a little bit loose, if you will. And so that allowed some of the fans to get after Phil, and not like they were attacking him, but, just accidentally stampeding him, if you will. And so I think that was a factor as well. It certainly goes against the whole gentleman quietness of the game, but that's sort of how golf is now too. It's sort of this theater, especially on a Sunday afternoon, and especially when Phil Mickelson, Jordan Spieth, Rory, or Tiger are walking up that 18th hole with a lead.
Well, heck, I'll tell you what, I feel like I break my concentration on a golf course if there's another threesome or foursome waiting on the tee right behind us. So I don't know how these pros do it,
Well, they've been doing it all their lives.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me, they've been surrounded by crowds all their lives. Because
Absolutely.
These golfers, everybody on the PGA Tour, number one, was a prodigy growing up. And so they had people around them. So in a way, they've been used to it.
Cam, are we familiar with the Twitter beef that came out on Twitter in response to the match that just got announced? Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady versus Bryson and Aaron Rodgers. Brooks Koepka and Bryson going at it on Twitter.
This is amazing. This is the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, number one, I love the matches. I think they're a lot of fun.
Oh,
so
yeah, absolutely.
I really am. I wish Tiger Woods was in it, but obviously he's recovering. So we'll have to wait on that. I think the date of the match is a little weird, Josh. July 6th. It should have been July 5th, in my opinion, because that is like the federal holiday for July 4th. Everybody is home. But anyway, look, this Twitter beef is amazing because it all started with that video, you may recall, that went viral on Twitter with Brooks at a press conference with Todd Lewis, and Bryson walks by him and I guess annoys him with his spikes. And it is a little bit weird that Brooks gets that mad about Bryson in that way. But anyway, here's how I see it. Brooks is like the bully who wants to make fun of Bryson because Bryson has a tendency to appear like he's a tool. I don't think he is a tool, but he has that appearance. So I think that's how the whole dynamic is. And then let's be clear, they just don't like each other. I think it's more of Brooks not liking Bryson rather than Bryson not liking Brooks, because Bryson has tried to repair this relationship, I guess, in the past. So it's all interesting. And yeah, there is some beef on Twitter because Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady are getting after it. And so they're kind of stoking this fire. And I guess Brooks tagged Aaron Rodgers, who's partners with Bryson. Sorry, bro. And then Bryson comes back with, can't believe I live rent free in your head. And then Brooks replied with some video of Bryson getting annoyed about the name Brooksy. So look, I think this is going to continue. I think it's great. I think TNT is loving it because they're behind all of this. Turner Sports will be presenting this event, so I think they enjoy it. Look, it's not something we really see often in golf, which makes it really unique. Like, if this was two football players going after it on Twitter, it would be like, all right, cool, whatever. But two golfers, a gentleman's sport where it's all about decorum and behavior. I mean, even back in the day, Phil and Tiger wouldn't really spat off at each other. Of course, we didn't have Twitter back then. But this is like a unique situation in golf. And so it really brings a lot of intrigue. And obviously, we're talking about it, so there's a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, I mean, looking at first and foremost, nobody else but TNT should have this match, because when you pair an NBA crew in Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, and Chuck, call a golf match, and they're just because we saw this last year with Brady and Manning. And by the way, that Brady looked terrible except for that one shot that went in. I forget which hole that was, ages ago, it seems like, but just talking in the golfer's ear and Chuck just harassing them. And there's nobody better to do it but TNT.
Well, it's just fun content. It's a nice break from like the classic PGA Tour event, right? Which sometimes can get mundane and a little dry. But when you have the personalities involved, you have the mics going, you have the smack talk, the chatter. I think it's all fantastic. It'll be interesting to see how Aaron Rodgers performs in smack talk and also on the golf course with his golf swing, because Rodgers is actually getting a little more involved with like the media now, with Jeopardy and what have you. So he's got his talking chops down. We'll see how he performs on the smack talk train.
Well, I mean, Rodgers isn't showing up for OTAs, so I mean, what better to do than to spend his time out of the country right now and playing in this golf tournament, because we don't know if he's coming back to Green Bay, but that's another discussion for another time. But Brooks Koepka, I mean, other than that, I'm hearing a lot of bad wind from people about Brooks Koepka and how he's terrible with the press and how he's rude. Do you get that vibe from him at all?
I wouldn't go as far as to say he's rude. I just think he wears his emotions on his sleeve. He does have a tendency to get a little annoyed with what the media says about him. So you could say he's thin-skinned a bit, as opposed to Bryson, who really ignores the chatter about him. So that's one big distinction between these two golfers. Yeah, I think he's fine. Like, I feel like it's a waste of time and energy to get annoyed about Brooks Koepka and how he is, because that's how he is. He's not going to change, so why even worry about it? I think it's refreshing because in golf, sometimes you can get a little vanilla with these guys out there. They're a little boring per se, don't have the personality as much, but Brooks is very much a feel player. You know, he's not technical at all. He can show up to a major, apparently less than 100%, and finish runner-up. So he's got that. And then you have Bryson, who's Mr. Mathematician, technician, crunch the numbers, but yet he can bomb it too. They both can bomb it. So they're two different golfers, but can do the same thing, compete in majors, win majors. So going back to Brooks and the media, I think it's just how it is. That clip that came out, Josh, was not supposed to come out. And it got pulled by Twitter, I Bleav, because of copyright or something like that. So that was a leak. Like, that was not supposed to go to air. It never did. And it certainly wasn't supposed to go onto Twitter. So that was a little bit of Brooks knowing it wasn't going to go on TV. And that's why he probably was dropping F-bombs and stuff. But, overall, I think he's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So wrapping things up here, thank you once again for the PGA Championship talk. But
yeah,
I have to get the rundown. You run the Tiger Woods show on the Bleav Podcast Network. Tiger Woods, we all know about his serious car crash. Cam, I want to know the rundown. How is Tiger doing? What do you know at this point about Tiger and his recovery process? Because when I saw the news that he got in this car crash in California, it immediately flashed me back to when Kobe Bryant tragically lost his life. And
same here.
I mean, it flashed me back and I was like, are we going to lose another professional athlete in the game of golf in Tiger Woods? Because no doubt Tiger Woods is one of the best to do it out there. So what do you know? What can you tell us about Tiger Woods right now?
Yeah, when the news broke, it was right after I recorded an episode. So I went back and after uploading it, did a little snippet of just, hey guys, this is happening. This is all I know. And then here's the rest of the episode because we had other content in that episode. Yeah, I think he is going through the rehab process right now in good spirits. We're getting some good anecdotes from players out there like Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler who are hanging out with him, texting with him. He's been very responsive. Fowler actually didn't qualify for the Masters, Josh, which is pretty interesting in its own right. But he was actually with Tiger watching the Masters, and he reported back that Woods is doing very well. And again, he's just going through the rehab process. There's really not too much new to say. We know he's upright. We know he's out of the walking boots, and he is essentially taking it day by day, going to his kids' soccer practice. So all signs point to a return to the PGA Tour at some point. I don't think it'll happen very soon. Certainly not this year. People ask me a timeline. I'm thinking late 2022, early 2023. We shall see. We know his priorities are the majors at this point in his career. So if he's not ready to go, or even if he is ready to go after the Open Championship in 2022, he probably won't come back. He'll probably wait till 2023, get ready for the Masters that year. But all signs point to good things. I will say about the Phil Mickelson win here, that's got to be inspiring for him to come back to the PGA Tour. When you see Phil at the age of 50 dealing with arthritis, which he announced back in 2010, has been dealing with that for quite some time and comes through at the Ocean Course. For Tiger Woods to see that, I think that's inspiring. He's going to come back to the game. To be a professional athlete, Josh, you have to have an ego. And to be the greatest golfer ever, you certainly have to have an ego. And there's no way he wants to go out like the way in which he did with that car crash. He'll be back for sure. But as of now, day by day, but things are looking pretty good.
I mean, this could be just me, but I feel like the media spent 3 weeks talking about Tiger Woods and his car crash for some reason. I'm not really sure why. They were trying to figure out exactly what happened, but I mean, I feel like Tiger Woods got in a car crash and he is recovering. Thank the Lord. He did not, nothing worse happened out of it, but I don't really understand why the media spent so long talking about Tiger Woods' car crash.
I think there were a lot of unknowns, and also there was a lesson to be told in journalistic integrity, right, Josh? Because TMZ was reporting about like the jaws of life being used to pry him out of his car. And TMZ typically is pretty good with sourcing, but that's more for like Hollywood stuff, not Tiger Woods and sports stuff. So eventually, we had a press conference with LA police saying, no, there was no jaws of life used. That's not accurate. So a lesson to journalists out there, if you will, to prioritize accuracy over immediacy. And I think that is a really tough tightrope to walk, because obviously you want the clicks, you want the views, but you also want to be right. And so I think that's why the story dragged on a little bit, because we were getting so many inaccuracies. And eventually the truth started to come out as the press conferences started to happen with the police, especially that day, where we learned a lot more. So I think that was a big reason why. And also it probably had to do with not a lot of news happening during that time. And obviously Tiger Woods is an iconic person. We also weren't really sure if he was like going to walk again. So like there was a lot of intrigue in terms of his health and making sure things are going to be okay. So I think that was also a big reason.
Once again, Cam Rogers, host of the Tiger Woods Show on the Bleav Podcast Network. You can find him on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. Cam, we appreciate you coming on to talk PGA Championship with us.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate you reaching out. Talk soon.
The Kirby on Sports podcast continues right after this. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. Huge thanks once again to Cam Rogers of the Tiger Woods Show on the Bleav Podcast Network. And boy, it's glad to hear that Tiger Woods is doing so well after that car accident, because I know when I saw that car accident and sort of flashed me back to when Kobe Bryant tragically lost his life. So I'm glad he is doing better, and to see him make that comeback, I think it would be very impressive. It would be amazing to see that happen if Tiger Woods made that comeback. All right, shifting our focus now from golf over to playoff hockey. I was able to talk with Anna Knox of the Power Play Point podcast about the NHL playoffs, but I do have a slight warning that at the time of recording this interview, some series results have not finished out from when this was uploaded, so it might not be completely up to date, but at least it gives you an idea of the playoff scenarios and our thoughts on some of the series so far. So without further ado, Anna Knox of the Power Play Point podcast. Welcoming to the Kirby on Sports podcast to chop it up with me, talking Stanley Cup playoffs, is none other than Anna Knox from the Power Play Point podcast. She covers the Capitals, diehard Capitals fan from the Northern Virginia area. And unfortunately, the Capitals season did not go as planned. We will get into that later. But Anna, thanks for coming on. How have you been?
Thanks so much. It's always so fun to be on your show. It's like, I love it. I've been good. I bummed with that heartbreak with the Capitals, but you know what? You move forward and you just watch outstanding playoff hockey.
I got to say, with this Stanley Cup playoffs, I was talking about a friend about this too, how some of these matchups should have been later round matchups, but with this shortened schedule and how the scheduling worked, and some of these matchups that look like matchups that should be played in the second or third round of these playoffs are getting played earlier. So I feel like, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Anna, but I feel like this Stanley Cup playoffs in the shortened season could lead to an improbable winner, like I lost the term there, but I mean, an underdog coming to win it in the playoffs. I could definitely see that happening because all these matchups so far are pretty darn good in the first round.
I've been, I have to admit, aside from, Capitals, Bruins, which I will say it was a fantastic series prior to the very first game. I was ready. I thought, this is it. This is going to be, they're going to go at it. They're going to go overtime. And unfortunately, we didn't kind of match up. But when you look at some of these underdog, like you said, I'm 100% all on that Winnipeg Jets. I'm going to say, like, I have to, like, how you 4-1 or 4-0 over completely swept the Oilers. Fantastic. And then I think the Islanders to give the Pens a good run for the money. So, it's kind of nice to see other names out there.
So just a disclaimer, the stuff we're talking about, teams could advance that haven't already after we release this podcast. But the Winnipeg Jets, first and foremost, I mean, they came from behind and beat the Oilers in the series and won it in overtime or double overtime. But
triple overtime last night.
Triple. Okay, triple overtime. That was a series. I mean, I saw highlights. I didn't get a chance to watch a lot live, but still, that series looked absolutely incredible the way Winnipeg just bounced back.
Absolutely. I mean, it came from one of those things where everyone, I think, was like, this is where we're going to see Connor McDavid. He's going to shine. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And you know what? Winnipeg was like, hey, don't forget about us. And they came out and God, they swept the Oilers. I mean, it's like, it is insane. And I unfortunately did not see the triple overtime because I don't think the puck dropped until like 9:45 out here. And I was fast asleep, but but it's exciting. I definitely have teams that I don't want to move on. Like the Knights, I just still like there's that, and I don't want to see, of course, the Pens, but I don't know, when it comes down to other things, like you really are looking at teams that have players, some vets that are fantastic, and then some youngins that are coming up that are just showing the NHL like, hey, this is just the beginning for me. So it's very exciting.
Speaking of Canada, do you like the format where all the Canadian teams are playing each other in the playoffs before it's 2 rounds of Canadian teams before they get matched up with teams in the States?
I think because of COVID and the way that things had to break down, I supported it, kind of keeping Canada and the US like separate. But I think this is just going to be a kind of crazy Stanley Cup playoffs, regardless, had we played a Canadian team or not. But I liked it, and I think that there's listening to my mother from Winnipeg, they are ready to have the cup back in Canada. So
well, I feel like this is unique because if I'm correct, the way the schedule worked. The Canadian teams just played each other. They did not play anybody from the States, correct?
Correct.
So this will be the first time any of these teams, because there's got to be a team from Canada coming out of this. Yes. Looking at this, there has to be a team. And this is where it gets interesting because you have all the rest of the teams from the States, and you have the Canadian teams lined up with the Avalanche, Vegas Golden Knights, and Minnesota Wild in that bracket on the west side, I believe. So this will be the first time an American States team battles against a Canadian team. So that's definitely going to be very difficult to game plan, in my opinion, because of the fact is you didn't play them. So that brings the element of surprise, at least on that side. And if a Canadian team is lucky enough to make it to the Stanley Cup final, that's going to be exciting because the element of surprise, the very such element of surprise, and vice versa, because these Canadian teams have not played teams from the United States. So it's just going to be interesting, in my opinion, how they worked it all out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, there was a side of me that I was just kind of 50-50 on when they broke up the divisions because of COVID. And we knew that we were playing Boston 8 times, the Flyers 8 times, kind of like very repetitive, that unfortunately we didn't get Boston's number soon enough because of injuries and whatever else. But what do you do when it comes down to, these 4 teams, then it comes down to 2 teams that haven't seen each other, and it's like, it's going to make for, I would hope it would go, into a game 7 to make it exciting, because it's just, and like the possibilities are endless. So I'm sure, like, all the bookies are like, what do you do? Like, who do you have money on? And it's this is a time when you're just going to look at it and say anything goes. So, yeah.
So let's bring up the Washington Capitals, because this is a touchy subject, I'm sure, for you, Anna. For me, I was on your show the other day, and I feel optimistic that the Capitals can improve, because it's Laviolette's first year. There was no expectation that, hey, I mean, you look at his resume, he's been in multiple cups, but still, you look at his resume, and we all know he's probably not going to lead this team to the cup. There have been injuries, COVID protocols being broken, or whatever that term is called, and just injuries towards the end. But looking into the playoffs, I feel like the goaltending situation is just very young, besides Craig Anderson. Right. Craig Anderson did decent, in my opinion, but I still feel like without Henrik Lundqvist, who was unfortunately unable to play due to the heart condition in the beginning of this season, it really took an effect on our goalies and the Capitals goalies. And I knew that if the Capitals were going to make it to the playoffs, that they weren't going to make it deep, because they don't have an experienced goaltender. Right. None of these guys have seen playoffs. Maybe Craig Anderson, but I mean, other than that, Vitek, Samsonov, and I mean, those are the young guys. They've never seen playoff action. They don't know what it's like. So I knew that the Capitals were going to be in some trouble, because playoff hockey is a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And I think the biggest thing that the Capitals missed out on this year with Lundqvist was just having a mentor, having somebody who, I mean, God, the king, come in between the pipes and tell you, here's how you can calm down. Here's what you can do. Here's what you need to focus on, and have that sort of guidance. And we didn't have that. And we obviously, we lost Holtby. So you're looking at 2 guys that came from Hershey that were friends, that were kind of, just rooting for each other. And I think, we were impressed with Sammy. I don't have anything negative to say about him. I think Vitek stepped up and was fantastic for what he had to do with the moment. It was very fast, it was, he didn't have a whole lot of time to kind of get into that position. And it was unfortunate, but my God, like, it is very, very stressful to think about that goalie situation for next year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at game 1 where Vitek just went out with an injury after doing the splits, that seemed really painful. But I mean, Craig Anderson did a good job coming in for Vitek. But after that, I mean, it looked like the Capitals were just going downhill. And I think a reason for that, they just weren't keeping their foot on the gas pedal. And I'm sure you can agree with me here. After they're getting the lead, they're just slowing down and thinking, oh, this is a cakewalk. But you can't think that against the Boston Bruins. And the shots on goal. I mean,
oh my God.
I mean, you have games where you're barely making shots on goal, or you're making a ton of shots on goal, but Tuukka Rask is just that darn good.
Yep. And 100%. I mean, it was, we did not, like, the hockey teams that came out on the ice, you had one that played 60 minutes and you had one that played maybe 40. And in the playoffs, you just can't. And our team, like you said, just had a lead, couldn't keep it, and didn't, I don't know, they didn't look like they wanted it as much, unfortunately. And then I think you look at, like when we spoke on our show the other night, you have a Boston lineup of vets that are just outstanding, and then other new players coming up, younger players, to have a balance. And we have that, but we just don't quite have the consistency and the chemistry yet. Not that I don't think that we will, but I just think that there were times that we saw it and it was on and they looked fantastic, and then we kind of changed things a little bit, or somebody got injured and it shifted the whole kind of mojo of the team. So I think next year, having read the quotes from Oshie and Ovechkin and Wilson and stuff, these guys are out here to give DC their all until they retire.
Yeah, and I feel like there's definitely going to be change coming for Washington.
Yeah.
There is another team coming into the league in the Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to root for the Kraken because I love their logo. Their logo looks so cool.
It does look pretty sick. I like the colors, but I still, I don't know. My loyalty is going to be here, and then the Sharks, and maybe the Jets, but we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how that team comes about, because we saw what happened with Vegas, and you kind of put a bunch of misfit players together that people were like, who cares? And then here they make it into the Stanley Cup, their first year, and they were good, and they continue to be good. Obviously, they're having a good playoff right now. So Seattle's going to be very, very hyped. Will we have players go there? Sure. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two of the Capitals going.
Yeah, so it's just going to be really interesting. I want to touch briefly before we move on. Sure. Ovechkin and Backstrom not getting agents. They're talking contracts on their own. Ovechkin still doesn't want to discuss it, but I don't see any possible reason where Ovechkin or Backstrom would leave this Capitals organization.
No way. I think that both of them, definitely one more in the spotlight than the other, but equally respected amongst fans. They're here. They have their roots here, now second roots, we'll say, where they're raising their family, and they really feel like they have embraced DC as their home. And, when you're with these players for so long, they do become your family. And so I just feel like, we will retire number 8, number 19, possibly 77, all, around the same time, because these guys are in it for the long haul for the DC fans, and just for the Capitals.
Talking with Anna Knox here on the Kirby on Sports podcast, the host of the Power Play Point podcast, one of the hosts, rather. Let's talk about the Avalanche. This was a team I believe I brought you on before the season started. And This is a team that you stated was a team you have to look out for. And they're definitely a team to look out for. They just defeated the Blues to move on in that game. They won the series 4-0, 4-0. So this team's red hot. Do you think they take it all the way into the Stanley Cup?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I honestly think that we have watched this team in the past almost make it, kind of thing. And I think that the players are dedicated. You have a Nathan McKinnon on your team. You can't go wrong. Burakovsky, you'll see what happens. And of course, we all love a Grubauer. So it'll be interesting. But I feel good about pulling for the Avs. I really don't have a problem with it.
There are still some tight games in this series, in this playoffs, rather. The Maple Leafs lead the Canadiens 2-1 in the series, and you have the Golden Knights on the verge of moving on. They lead the Minnesota Wild 3-2. But as a disclaimer, some of this stuff might change by the time we release this podcast. So The Lightning, the number 3 seed Lightning, a 3-2 lead over the Panthers. I like the Panthers. I feel like the Panthers have been playing well this season. And I'm not sure if they have enough to beat this Lightning team, because they still have some of those star players from back when the Capitals played them. But still, I think this Panthers team could have a chance to come from behind and be one of these underdog teams, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I actually have the same thing written down, that I think, everyone expected the Lightning to be in the playoffs, which is fine. But there's not a whole lot of chatter out there about the Panthers. I think people just don't, almost like kind of forget about Florida Panthers. I mean, to be honest, it's, when you're thinking about playoffs, you're thinking, we've got Boston and Capitals and this and that, like the Panthers, really. But you know what? It would be awesome to see them go forward, just because it is just like one of those unknowns for the COVID year.
Game 3 and 4 of the Hurricanes versus Predators series ended up both in double overtime. This series might be the closest one out there.
Yep. And absolutely that Canes coach is not going to stop at anything. He wants it bad, and so do those players. And so there's a side of me that, because when they're in the Metro Division and we have to play them, I kind of hate the Hurricanes, but then I also hate the Preds. So to be the lesser of two evil, I don't know who I'd root for, but I guess if it's the Canes' time to go for it.
Barry Trotz in the New York Islanders, one win away from knocking off Pittsburgh in the first round. I know you're going to love that if that happens, Anna. But, I mean, Barry Trotz making a name for himself in New York. You can't help but be fans of the Islanders because of what Barry Trotz has done for the Washington Capitals. And he's doing a pretty darn good job over there.
He is. He's, you know what? He's a coach that you admire and respect, and always will, whether he's your current coach, former coach, definitely has respect across the board, especially, in DC and everything else. So I'm okay, seeing the Islanders take out the Pens. I would be really okay with that.
Yeah. So, Anna, after the Bruins Capitals series, how much more did your hatred for Brad Marchand grow?
Is there a cap to how much I hate that guy? Oh, you know what it is? I will say this, like when Gil and I think when we were talking before you came on, that there is I just despise that guy just because of, how he is on ice, and the manipulation and stupid things that he does, and that smug look. But you have to acknowledge the fact that he is damn good. I mean, I can't take away from his talent and his skill. Does it drive me crazy that as fans, we know how he's going to be on ice, and yet the Capitals still can't seem to stop him? But I think what I hate about him is, he definitely eggs on players, and he gets away with a lot from the refs, as does Crosby. So that's where, but oh my God, if you just look at his face, sometimes you're like, throat punch, just a single throat punch.
All right. So we're not going to pick overall champions, but I just want to get your thoughts. Who makes it to the conference finals and who faces off in the Stanley Cup?
Oh, okay. Going. You want me to go down Islanders Pens and try it that way? Go all the way down?
No, just the conference finals and who wins those.
God. I'm going to go, let's see.
We got to do some bold predictions here on the Kirby on Sports podcast.
I know, but I almost want to hear yours first to see if I'm going to counter them, because I feel like it's so, because you just say,
I'll go first.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm picking is it the Western Conference that the Canadian teams are on?
No, they are playing. Let's see. I'm trying to think of how they had it.
Because those formats changed due to COVID, right?
Yes. Let me see how they have it. I know it's so crazy. Oh, it's, you know what? I'm going to look at the
semifinals. I guess they're calling it semifinals.
So if you look, okay, so if you're going to look at the Central Division. You can look at it as NHL standings.
Yeah. So let's call it the semifinals leading up to the Stanley Cup, because the divisions are not the same.
Right. So the North Division is going to be your Canadian teams.
Okay. The North Division Canadian, the Winnipeg Jets, facing off against the Avalanche, Colorado Avalanche, in the semifinals on one side of the bracket. I have the Avalanche winning 4-3 in the series. In the other side of the bracket, the semifinals, I'm picking the Islanders against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's going to be a close one, but I think the Lightning will pull it out, and it will be the Lightning and the Jets in the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bold prediction. I've been studying, but
okay, but
I could be completely wrong.
You think you think out of the Avs and the Jets, you think the Jets are going to take it? I thought you said the Avs are going to take it.
The Avs, yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'm sorry, I said Jets. No, I meant Avs. I'm sorry. Lightning.
You think Avs Islanders?
Yes. No, Avs Lightning.
Oh, Avs Lightning.
Yes.
I know. Like, you're kind of throwing me for a loop now, because part of me wants to say,
I'll count down from 3. I want you to pick.
I want to see Winnipeg, and I have to see like opponents. God, this is hard.
I got Anna good this time.
You did. You seriously did. Because I'm like trying to consider like what the options could be, like who they could go up against, and I don't know.
I think the Islanders will have a great run, but the Tampa Bay Lightning will end it for them.
And you think the Pens are out, and you think the Panthers are out.
Yeah.
Oilers, we know, are done. So, but you think that the Wild will beat the Knights? It's 3-2 Knights right now. That's the other team. That's kind of like that one, I don't know, it's like a Joker card in my mind.
Yeah, I think the Knights are going to take that, in my opinion.
Okay. And then you have Toronto, who I think will take it.
Yeah.
And I think the Hurricanes will take the Preds.
Mm-hmm.
God. Is it possible for the Jets to play Colorado? No. Yes? See, I think this whole series has me like...
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. I'm looking right now. It is possible for the Jets to play the Avalanche. I'm picking them in the semifinals. The Avalanche winning 4-3. The Islanders versus the Lightning. The Lightning take it.
Okay.
They're playing in the Stanley Cup.
I'm going to say the Jets take the Avs 4-3. I think the Jets have it in them. As much as I absolutely respect Colorado, but you have both teams that swept their opponents. But the Jets, I feel, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're just aching to get it back to Canada. Like, who knows? But man, that second one, I don't know. Islanders, think they have it in them?
I think so.
Okay.
That's a bold prediction, though.
It is. It is.
I'm waiting to hear it.
I know. I know. It's so crazy because I'm like, okay, so I'm like, Jets Avalanche. I think the Jets will take it. I have to figure out who their opponent's going to be. But I'm like, I don't know if I have it. I can't go. I won't go with the Islanders.
Apparently this is so hard for Anna.
I know. This is, you know what this is?
I didn't realize it would be this hard.
I think it's because, you get so used to being like, oh, it's definitely going to be the Caps in this. But when they have a change of teams, like we haven't played, any Canadian teams and whatever else. So it's so hard to know how they're going to go up against each other.
I'm counting down from 5. 5.
Okay, so I have Jets and oh my God. Jets
Knights. Wow.
And I'm gonna hate that.
Jets Knights semifinals on one side and the other side.
Yeah. So
what's on the other side?
Oh, so we have Jets Knights. God, you have seriously thrown me for a loop.
Oh my.
Just because I'm so terrible that I could overthink everything.
Heck, I was overthinking it. I changed my pick 4 times.
Did you though? Well, you didn't say that tonight. You were like, you knew it was going to be Islanders.
I have to study up.
That's true.
You know?
Maybe I haven't looked at it enough to know what my options are. God, I don't know. I really truly don't know. I feel like I'm just totally stumped because it could go like 100 different ways.
Well, we'll give you a free pass. It was probably too much of a loaded question there. But Anna, appreciate the time as always coming on the podcast. We're going to get you on for a Stanley Cup final recap. I'm really looking forward to that. But thanks once again for chopping it up, talking hockey with us here.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, like you would think I would be more prepared for this, but I really do think it's this whole like COVID mix up that I'm like, what are the possibilities? What are the chances of this team and this team? And, try to look at it that way. So either way, let's just hope, that Jets take it at least for one of the teams in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see. I'm sure you'll be intensely watching as long as me. Anna Knox, once again, of the Power Play Point podcast, one of the hosts on there. She's also on Sports on the Hill every Monday night on Facebook Live. The Kirby on Sports podcast will continue after this. Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. I really did hit Anna with a loaded question there at the end, asking her to predict the 2 teams who would make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, I didn't realize it would be that much of a loaded question, but still, always great to have Anna Knox of the Power Play Point podcast on our podcast, and that about wraps things up for this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. As always, our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Big thanks to Productions by Quet and Dave Johnson as well. You can check out the Kirby on Sports podcast on all streaming platforms. Make sure you check out our website, www.kirbyonsports.com, and check us out. Follow us on all social media platforms as well. Until the next time, always remember to create greatness, and we will catch you next time. Peace out.